Hi guys, it's Blackie. Okay, it's been raining. It's been raining for a couple of days now. We got a tropical depression moving up, so it's just been a constant rain and drizzle. And it's about 11 o'clock at night. So, we're going to do a project. So, get you something to drink, get you something to snack on, because this is going to be a long video. But we're going to cover a project. And what the project's going to be on this is we're going to create a tarp set from beginning to end. All the components, everything I use for a tarp set. We're going to discuss why I think we need each of these parts. So, let's get started. Here is the list of supplies. Okay, here's the junk on the bunk for this project. First, we have a U.S. Army surplus tarp. We have 6 stakes. We have some paracord that's a distinct color so we can tell about ridge lines. We'll get more of that later. We have a alternate contrasting color, more of that later. We have some heavy line to make guidelines out of. We have a pair of scissors. We have a roll of duct tape. We have a small piece of bank line, and we have a penny. With this, we're going to make up our tarp set. Okay, now starting with that, you can start out with a ready-made tarp, a sil nylon tarp, a canvas tarp, poly tarp, plastic tarp, whatever that you're wanting. And you know, it's just whatever you want to go with. Now, I'm going to talk about a military surplus tarp. These are available. You can often get them on eBay or you at a gun show or something. And I want to give you a couple of ideas on what to look for when you're looking at a surplus tarp. Now, this one is a military surplus tarp like it's available right now. And this is being used by the Marines and other military units. And these are in the surplus market right now. Now, they have a nylon material on one side, and on the other side is a contrasting kind of coyote color. And this has got like a silicone adhesive or something, a silicone spray to make it waterproof on this side. It's thin, it's relatively lightweight. Quite often you're going to see these bungees on these things. This was a building material for our troops in Afghanistan, Iraq, and other things. With these, they make hooches, huts, they make bunkers, they make whatever. It's the step up from the poncho for something. It ain't got a hole in the middle of it, but you can snap together to make walls or whatever. So these are used a lot. That also means that whenever it gets some sort of problem and it comes out of the field and goes into the surplus market for you to get it, probably there's going to be a problem with it. That's the reason it got turned in. So you want to look at these carefully. Now, taking your tarp, you want to open it up, look at it. Don't buy a tarp at a gun show that's sealed up in a plastic bag. They're probably hiding the problems. Okay? First up, you want to take it and you want to hold it up to a strong light and look and see if there are any pinholes in it. There are probably going to be a few. These were used to make beds, chairs, whatever in the field. Cover up things, to sling load stuff to pick up in a hurry in employment, whatever. So oftentimes these will have some sort of little minor damage or major damage. I've got like 6 of these, and I know you're going to ask. So in the description, I'm going to put where I get mine at a local surplus place down here. They still have some, and the price is around 25 bucks or so, depending on condition. Talk to them, they'll see if they can get you one if this is what you're looking for. If not, I suggest you go look on eBay and places like that or gun shows. Now, these tarps have reinforced seams with a series of grommets and a series of snaps on it so they can snap together. Take it out, open it up, and you want to run down these and look at each one of the snaps. Make sure they're not damaged, broken off. Make sure that the seams along the edges fit good. When you get to a grommet, make sure the grommets are good, they're not tore out. Now, if one is weak, that can be adjusted in the price, and you can simply come over a ½ inch and put a new grommet in, but bear that in mind. The grommet's going to hold the bulk of the work. Now you're going to go all the way around looking at that. That's step 1. Step 2, holding it up. Put it over your head so you can see any pinholes in it. A few pinholes is not bad. A little duct tape will fix that. A lot, it's a ground cloth. If it's going to be more than, let's say, 8 or 9 or 10 little bitty patches, pass on it. Look for something else. I have one of these that in one corner, a section in the inside of the material has stretched. The sides are not stretched, but the material in the middle is stretched. Obviously it was picking something up, or maybe sand piled up and made a big thing. But anyway, because of that, the tarp is physically stretched there, and there's no way I can set it up without it being a pocket that's going to catch water. So that has become a ground cloth. Okay, this one has only a few holes in it. After you've looked up, got everything, you've made your purchase, this is the one I'm going to go with. Now let's talk about the little things we got to do to make this better. When I get it home, I'm going to stake it out. I'm going to take and put, in a diamond configuration or something like that, or maybe just drape it over a line and stake it out like a pup tent. And I'm going to put a water hose on it. I don't mean just sit there and wet it. I want a sprinkler system to run on it like it's raining for at least 20 minutes. Because small problems in seams are not going to show up until it's been wet for a little bit. You got to give the water time to snake its way through whatever problem may be. Then I want to check it to see if it's leaking at all inside. The places that I have already ID'd, I'll take a marker and make a little mark so I know where to come back and cover that over with a patch. But it'll also let me know, like a lot of these surplus tarps or even modern tarps, brand new tarps right out of the box, sometime will have like this, a seam in the material. That's simply in the manufacturing process where they're putting large section, they might get 3 or 4 in a run. And so that's where in the manufacturing process they're hooking 2 pieces. It's very reinforcing tape, but as you notice it's got a strip of tape on it. That was factory that way, but it might leak. So I'm not going to know that unless I stake it out and I put a sprinkler system on it. Now I've ID'd where I've got problems. Take a magic marker like I said and put a little dot of that hole or whatever. See that, that tape ain't holding up and I need to fix it. Now comes the fixing part. Let me shift the camera and we'll talk about that. Okay, now this tarp has got several pretty good sized holes in it. I know you can't hardly see it from that side, so I'm going to flip it over. Now you can see this hole right here. Now what I'm using here, and you can use clear Gorilla brand duct tape, does a good job, and they make a waterproof tape, and Slick Seal makes a waterproof tape now that does a good job. This is permanent Gorilla duct tape, works fine for me, but you do what you want. Now what I'm going to do is take a pair of scissors and I'm going to pull me out a patch just slightly bigger than I need, and now I'm going to round off the edges. Why round the edges? I have learned that any kind of sharp point wants to be where it starts peeling off. So I'm trying to avoid that if at all possible. So all I'm going to do is just simply take and round off the edges just like this, so there is no sharp point edge on it. And then right over it I'm going to smear the material out nice and smooth. I'm going to put the patch over it, press down and get it good and sealed just like this. Take your time and go ahead and work it in a little bit so you can see it. It's fully stuck just like that. Okay, now I'll work my way around. Now if it's a small one, I'll cut a smaller piece. Now this seam right here, okay, on mine the seam is not leaking, but if it was, then I would take that clear tape and run this entire seam. It can be in pieces as long as the pieces overlap. Don't think you got to do a 6-foot long piece and not mess up. It's easier to cut a 10-inch long piece and apply it and then overlap it by like a 1/2 inch and go again. But this works just fine for coming up with these patches of any kind of holes or any kind of weakness in it. Now, if you've got a problem along the edge out here, you can double duct tape and go over the side and let it come in like a couple of inches or something like that to act as a reinforcement. You can't do that with a grommet. The grommet has to secure to good material. Otherwise, you're just going to pull it right out. So, that's the thing you do on your inspection. Always look at the grommets and make sure they're good. I don't know how many times I've bought a tarp at a gun show or something, or even a backpacking store, and you know, they have sung the praises of it, that it's the greatest thing ever invented, you know, and then whenever you actually get out there, it leaks like a sieve, and you're just, you know, in a pickle. Now, using this, I can tell that those little dots did not cover a hole. I think this was being used because it got circles drawn around them. That actually is a hole. That's a little cut. And that's a couple pieces of shrapnel holes, looks like. So I'll lay it out flat and I'll make my repair. The less you have to do, the better. Now, of course, if I was starting out with a brand new tarp, I wouldn't have to do this. But at the same time, if it's a good deal, it seems to be a good tarp, and it's going to be a strong working tarp, why wouldn't I want to do it? A lot of these military surplus tarps have got a lot more backbone to them than a lot of the modern backpacking tarps. They're a little lighter, and they're oftentimes not set up for any real durability. You get a season or two out of them. But the military tarps are designed to take a whole lot more beating. I mean, they've been through a lot of, not only just training, but they've been through a heck of a lot of field trial before the Army would buy it and adopt it. So normally it's a tougher material than, say, your average, you know, backpacking tarp. And I expect it to perform accordingly. Now, I've had sil nylon tarps, plastic tarps, you name it. I've played with about all of it, and usually you'll get good service even out of a cheap one for a season or so, if you take care of it, if you respect the weaknesses and the strengths of it, etc. On the other hand, I've seen really expensive tarps go bust in one camp out because they weren't treated well, or for whatever reason they just didn't have the backbone for what they needed to do. I spent I think it was close to $100 one time for a sil nylon tarp on a trip going to the mountains of Tennessee. And the first weekend of that week and a half long trip, we got into a pretty good thunderstorm, and it just basically shredded. It couldn't take the wind slapping it, and we had a high wind thunderstorm, and it just fell apart. All the grommets went ripping out of it. You know, it'd been great set up in a front yard with rain on it, but it was no good in the actual field. Okay, let me continue going around the tarp, and we'll move on to the next step. Okay, now we're going to move on to the next step. I've gone around, I've patched my tarp completely. And now I'm going to do the penny mod. I did a video of this quite a while back. But I'm going to take a piece of my bank line, and I'm going to split off, this is standard 36 bank line, and I'm going to split off one strand of that bank line, just like this, just by unraveling it. Okay, one piece 36 bank line stripped down. Now on the end of it, we're going to go ahead and tie an overhand knot. Pull that tight. Put a second knot right there with it. Keep from unraveling, just like that. Cut that little tab off. I'll be finding duct tape giblets all over my carpet for a week. There. Same thing on the other end. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here on one end, and I'm simply going to make a loop just about big enough for 2 fingers to go through. Okay, make it a little bit bigger than that. And I'm going to do an overhand knot and cinch that up. What I want to do is make a loop. Okay, just like that, just big enough to put 2 fingers through. Now I'm going to take the rest of the line right here, and I'm going to go through that loop, pull it through the loop, go back through itself, and pull. And that's going to kind of anchor that knot to that end so it can't cinch up. Okay? Now, I'm going to take my tarp. I'm going to lay my penny and my thing I made just out of the way. I'm going to take my tarp, and I'm going to get all 4 corners folded into one place. Okay, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. All 4 corners in one hand. Now, I'm going to pull out the side, or the other side, by folding the corners, and then by doing that, as you see here, it brings it to a point right here. Okay, all it is, I've taken the tarp, folded half the other way, and found this bottom corner farthest away. See, follow that line up, you got edge, edge. This is the center of the tarp, and that's what I want. I'm going to put my camouflage outside, so I'm going to pinch it right there. I'm going to fold it all back over my arm. Just like that until I get to this point right here. Okay? Now, I'm going to lay that right there so it's not going to collapse and go away, because I just had to fold all that to find that center point. That's the center of my tarp. I'm going to take my little bitty cord I just made, and I'm going to wrap it around my fingers twice, and I'm going to roll it under, back through that noose, just like that. So it's just a loop. Okay? Lay that down. I'm going to take that U.S. Army, the United States currency penny, and I'm going to go in, run my arm with that penny in my hand back in here to this point. And I'm going to push that penny into that point, just like that. Now, like a rock being put in there, I got a penny in there. I take that loop I created, I put that loop over, I put the finished loop, the one I started with, over my thumb so it don't go away. And I'm going to grab the other end and I'm going to pull it tight, just like that. Now it's got that penny captured, and this is now a loop. Now I'm going to go wrap it a couple times pretty snug. I'll come up here and I'm going to tie a square knot between the knot and that cordage, pulling that loop I created and pulling it down tight, just like that, leaving me now a loop in the middle of my tarp, right in the middle to pull it out with. Okay? Do one more little like that, just for giggles, and I'm going to cut it off. Now I have a loop in the middle of my tarp. Now I'm ready to fold up my tarp and move on to the other components. Okay, next part, tent stakes. I like these aluminum or titanium, whatever you want to call it, stakes like you get at Walmart or wherever, for a light, easy carry. Yes, I know that the big old the yellow plastic ones are bigger and more robust, but they take up a lot more space. And for what I'm doing, these will normally do the job. Now, as you notice, they've already got loops tied into them. I'm going to change all these loops out right quick. One of my followers sent me a coil of line. This is Tough Line 200-pound test braided diachron line, 200-pound test. And I'm sorry I lost who you were, and I wanted to say thank you very much, and please let me know who you were. I want to give you credit for it. But what we're going to do is we're going to cut these cords off of these stakes, and then we're going to replace them with an improvement. I'll show you that. There we go. Now, this line is very small and strong, and I like that. Now, what you want to do with your stakes, make sure these top corners are not sharp. And make sure that the hole that has been punched through it for the guy line is not sharp. Take your fingers and do like that. I've had a couple that were sharp and would actually cut the line. So make sure of that your stakes are actually kind of rounded. We're going to get to something to help push this in the ground a little bit later. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take a piece of line about a little over a foot long, put it through the opening like that, come up here and do a pair of overhand knots, just like this. What I do is I tie an overhand knot in it, and I grab and go and do a second overhand knot with that. Okay, just like that. Now that should be nice and strong and should not come out. Trim off that excess. Just like that. Now let me do the rest of those right quick. Okay, now I have tied each one of the tent stakes with a pretty good sized loop. Now this loop is not big enough on average to go back over the point. There's a couple of inches of free bore, okay, on every one of them. Now if you'll also notice, on one of them I have tied the end a good deal longer, okay, just one. This one with a good deal longer is how we're going to make all this work. I'm going to take it, and I'll take all my stakes with the cords facing away from me. Okay, take cord, pull it down. Take cord, pull it down, lock it. Take cord, pull it down, set it in a stack. Take cord, pull it down, put it up here. Put it down. And that last one, with that unusually long one, we're going to come like that. We're going to lock them together, and then we're going to take this cord and we're going to cross over, make a loop that I can then pull down here, pull tight, go back through again, just run it underneath that gap, pull tight, run her underneath there, pull tight. And that is sort of a way to keep them in the same place in the tarp. Now I have experimented with this with putting a rubber band around them right here. And that's the easy thing to do, is get to this point right here and just simply just put a rubber band around them. But I find this keeps it to a minimum problem of pulling it out. And this way all I got to do is take that long one and slide up like that, and it starts, and they all start just falling apart. Okay, so that long one helps me anchor it. I can come from the other way. I've done that as well. Come down here. Yep, you got rain. coming down out there. Put over the top, slide that loop down like that, cinch it up good and snug like that, and just stick it back under a few times. It's a very loose thing. It's not meant to be blood tight. It's not meant to keep them from falling apart. It just kind of keeps them in a pile, so when I put them in my stuff they don't migrate around. That's the idea for that. Okay, now we're going to go to the ridge line, and I'm going to start with the ridge line material I picked up for this project. Paracord comes in all kinds of colors, so it's not a big deal to go pick up something. Now, I've mentioned before, for a ridge line, I want something funky colored. And I typically want a contrasting color that connects to my tarp, so that when I pull this up out of whatever, for whatever reason, I can look at it and go, that's a ridge line. It's not just a hank of black or green paracord. Okay, you can use black or green paracord, but use a contrasting color, like use a green paracord with black tarp hangers, or vice versa if you don't want to use this system. But I have found this saves me a lot of trouble of me cutting up an existing ridge line thinking it was just a hank, and then 2 camp outs later finding out that was my ridge line that I didn't put up last time. You know, that type of thing. Now, how far? We're going to need a lighter for this to be able to burn the ends. And how long am I going to make this ridge line? I want a 20-foot long ridge line. That should handle the beginning of it. But I'm going to make another piece first, and that's going to go on my tarp. I want a 10-foot long piece to go onto my tarp, and that's going to be permanently attached. So I've got my cinched in, and I'm going to measure out. Now, I know how tall I am, and your reach equals your height, so usually hooking my thumbs, grabbing a piece and hooking my thumb, and simply going until I pull them tight should give me about right at 5'8", something like that. So 1, 2 right there. Cut it, squirts that in. Mash her down, hit her again. Mash it down. Okay. Now on the other end, put this out of the way before it becomes a big jumble. On the other end, I'm simply going to tie a small bow line. And that's holding it facing you this way, grab the line, roll it uphill. Actually, excuse me, tie a knot in the end first. I know it's been burned, but tie a knot. Okay, facing you straight ahead, grab it, twist it up and form a loop. Go through the loop, round behind the line, back down through the loop. Pull it tight. I want to make a small bowline on one end. Now on my tarp, on the point that I'm going to use for setting up my shelter, I'm going to take away this bungee that was already on it. I'll save this for other uses. Now I'm going to take this and put that loop through it. Just take it and push it through the grommet, and then take the loose running end and run back through it. Just like this. Now, this becomes a quick deploy line for setting it up as a diamond. This will also be the line that I use to wrap up and secure my tarp, so that if it's inclement weather and I got to get a shelter up in a hurry, I've already got a line attached. I don't have to dig nothing out. All I got to do is grab this, run around the tree and anchor it, pull it out and stake 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 it, and I got a diamond. I'll shove a stick or something up in the middle right quick, or use something for me to hold it and let the downpour occur. So this is my quick deploy turned into a shelter line. Okay, now going back to, I want 20 feet of this line, so let me measure out 20 feet right quick, and then we'll move on to the next step. Now I've got the end of my ridge line. I'm going to cut it off close, get rid of them little jabbies. I'm going to burn that in. I've tied a knot in it already. Okay, now I'm going to measure out 20 feet. I ain't got to be exact, but that's definitely over 20 feet right there. So I'm going to cut it, tie a knot in that end, and I'm going to burn that in. If you do not burn the ends, they're going to fray eventually. If you don't tie a knot in it and then burn it, it will eventually fray out. It's just the way it is. Just by wear and tear, pulling on it, pulling on the outer skin, etc. Alright, now I have my 20-foot base length. Okay. Now I'm going to come up here to the opposite end, and I'm going to tie a big bowline. I want a bowline big enough I can put my fist through. So I'm going to come up here, I'm going to grab the line, twist it uphill, form a loop like that. So here's the line coming down. I'm just going to take my two fingers, pinch it, and roll it uphill. Just like that. Make a loop where the top of the loop's laying on top. Okay? Now I'm going to take the end with a knot. I'm going to go through, around, up to the hole, underneath my running end, come back around and go back in. And once I get there, I'm going to pinch that knot in that end, and I'm going to pull this in. I want to make sure this knot don't close up totally yet. I want it to be a pretty good size loop. Now it'll become important in a minute. Right, dress it up, pull all the knots down to where they're tight, just like that. Now see that good size loop right there? This will allow me to do what I want to do. Now, at this stage, I'm going to come over here on the opposite end. And I'm going to take and hook it in my pinky, and I'm going to coil it up. Okay, now I've got down here and I've got a little bit left. That's where I want to stop. I want to slide my fingers out. I want to take my line, simply roll it into a loop, grab the line, twist it so it forms a loop, put that loop over the hank that I've just created, pull it, make another one of those loops, go over the top, pull it, make another one of those loops. Only about 3 of them is sufficient to hold it. And make sure you pull it snug. Now that is able to take a little bit of handling without it falling apart. But it's not really a knot. Just 3 loops, you loop out and it comes out. Now, why do I want that bowline knot so big? It's so when I go to deploy, I can take my entire rest of my ridge line and pass it through it. Okay? And why we're going to do that is this. Let me put you a demonstration up here to show you. Here is my tree, okay? I come up to the tree, I go around the tree, and then I pass my ridge line through that bowline, and I pull it up tight right quick. Boom, I'm on the tree. No matter how wet it gets, no matter how much it tugs, no matter whatever in the storm, it's a big loop. I can come and take it right back off. If I want to quick deploy this, where I want to be able to snatch it down, I come around, I go over, under, flip it through 3 times, and I've made myself a timber hitch with that loop being the quick disconnect. And I've done videos on how to tie a timber hitch before. That's how you can snatch it and just fall off the tree. But that's the beginning of my ridgeline. Now we create the connectors that allow me to connect this ridgeline to my tarp. And for that, we're going to use a contrasting color of line. Okay, now we're going to create the connector that goes from my ridgeline to my tarp, my woodsman's spruce, I call it. So what I'm going to do is I'm taking a contrasting color of paracord. And as you know, looking at that donut, this is cord to be cut, because this is how I coil up raw cordage. So when I reach down in a haversack and I pull it out, there's no doubt that's not a ridge line, that's not whatever. That is strictly cord to be deployed, cut, whatever. Okay? Now, I've already got one knot in this end. All I'm going to do to begin this is this. I'm simply going to take the cord and I'm going to start tying overhand knots and pull them up tight against each other. So just go overhand, through, overhand, just cinch it up tight, through. Keep pulling them tight, working out any kinks, and just keep going this way until you get about 3 inches of it. I'd say 3.5 to 4 inches of this overhand knot. And yeah, it's going to try to kink up on you. Just give it a quick twist. Pull it down like that. You see how this is beginning to be a series of knots? That's what I want. Overhand, cinch it up to the end. Overhand, cinch it up to the end. Just like that. And about 2 more. We'll call it good for this one. And I know what you're thinking. Where is Blackie going with this? This does not make sense. Well, if you followed my channel, you've seen that I have a quick disconnect for my tarps and etc. So I can just grab and unhook my tarp instantly from a ridge line. No question. Real quick. And we're doing that again. Alright, now I've got about a couple inches, say 3 inches worth of a string of knots. Okay? Now I'm going to come up here about, I don't know, I want at least, say, that much, 4 or 5 inches. Okay? Right there, I'm going to go up maybe a little bit more, and I'm going to do 1 overhand knot. I'm going to cinch it down there. Okay? Just like that. Now I'm going to create a loop about that big. Okay? So I'm going to measure right here. I'm going to tie an overhand knot. Really simple. Pull that cord through there. Tighten up that knot. Make sure it's not twisted up. Now for review, I have my series of knots right here. I have my space of 6, 7, 8 inches, whatever. I have a knot. I measure out, so I make a loop about that big, about 1 hand width, and I've tied another knot. Now I'm going to put those 2 knots together right there. I'm going to cut at this knot right here. Okay? Now I'm going to put those 2 knots together right there, and I'm going to make me an overhand knot just like this. Now Pull that good and blood tight. What I have is, take my lighter, burn that knot on that end. Flat. Where the knot that I've just created, where it joins, give it just a little bit to make it stick to itself good. Okay. Now, pulling back up my ridge line. Okay. Here's the hank of the ridge line. Here's the bow end of the ridge line. I'm going to take my quick connector. I'm going to take that loop. I'm going to come up here to the ridge line, and I'm going to create a prusik knot. I'm going to go through 3 times. 1, 2, and finally 3. Pull that through. Now, I want to sit there and take my time and dress that knot up just like that. Okay? So now I have a length with a series of knots and a prusik. The prusik, as you know, will slide along the ridge line. Let me hook this over on this side. The prusik, under no tension, will slide up and down the ridge line. But when pulled, it bites and don't want to slide. Okay? So what I'm now going to do is I'm going to take my tarp, and how to attach this to it is when I deploy my ridge line and I want to hook up my tarp right here, I come up and I take this spacer and I form a loop. I stick that loop through the grommet just like that, and then I bring that series of knots up and go through that loop that I just created like that. Put it right in the middle. Now when I pull, that locks because this series of knots cannot go through the grommet, and so that loop is hooked, and I have my prusik knot right here. So when I pull the tarp, it goes tight, but I can slide adjust my tarp just by giving it slack, see, to wherever I want to go. An instant lock. And to get it off, all I got to do is make it slack, pull up on the knot, and pull those knots out. Ta-da! If I want an emergency quick disconnect, I come up closer to the prusik, I make the loop. Now I go through that loop just like before, and now I come over, but where the cord connects to this series of knots, I take and put that through and pull it. Okay? Now, see if I can get this to work with my tensioner here. Okay, now all I got to do is grab that and just pull, and it falls off. But it won't come off under load. As long as I got tension on that tarp, it's not going anywhere. So put the loop through, take the end where the cord's attached and just stick it through, and then pull it. And therefore you gotta, it's not gonna go, it can't go in. But all I gotta do is just pull it slack and go boink, pull that out, and it comes right off. This now becomes my staying with my prusik stays on this line, see, it's always attached. So I set up my ridge line and I already got my tarp connector. I don't have to tie the tarp, I don't have to come up here and find a toggle. I just whoop whoop, I hook up my tarp and I can adjust my tarp forward or back at will, just like this. Okay, so here is my completed ridge line. The ridge line has the hanked up cordage, it has the bowline on the end, and it has 2 already made up quick connect tarp hangers on it. So I can quickly and easily connect to my ridge line just by throwing around and hooking through the grommets. I slide these up against the bow line, just like that. And then I'm going to take and spiral around the extra cord till I get down here kind of low. Now, the bowline gets twisted over everything. And then the two quick connects go in opposite directions, just like that, and come back and do a simple cross over. That keeps my ridgeline from unraveling in the pack. So I've got my ridgeline ready to grab and go instantly. Now, we got 6 stakes. We got the ability to hook to the tarp with the loops. But what I need is I need guy lines as well. I don't want to take up a great deal of space. I don't need paracord for that. So that's where we're going to come to a second quick connect. I'm going to use my white line right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a piece of my paracord I got right here. And I'm going to tie another series of knots like I started out to make my woodsman's spruce. But when I get done, instead of making that, I'm going to create me a guy line. Now I've put a couple of loops onto it already. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the end of my cord. I'm going to tie a knot in the end of it, just like that. And now I'm going to do a simple overhand knot kind of close. I want it just big enough to stick the paracord through. Just like that. Now I'm going to take my knots. I'm going to thread at least 2 knots down, just like that. And now I'm going to tie, cut up about that much line. Okay. So this is going to become a guideline. I've got this hooked just a loop onto that end, doubling it back through so it cannot come off. And all I'm doing is, guys, okay, I've got my line. I've got a loop in that end. I'm going to pull it up here close, and I'm going to take that loop and twist it, okay, just like that. And I'm going to take that other end of that paracord and I'm going to run it through it, just like that. Now I'm going to work that all the way down to that knot. So it's kind of like a lark's head stuck onto the paracord, okay? And now I'm going to finish tying that series of knots. And now I've got down here the end. I've tied that up good and tight. Stretch it a little bit. Get all that tension in there. Cut that end off. Burn that in. So it's not going to unravel. Alright, what I have now is I have my guy line attached to the middle of that series of knots. Now it's going to be used exactly the same way as the woodsman's spruce was. When I go to need a guy line in my tarp, I've got my grommet. I'm simply going to form a loop, put my loop up through, and then I'm going to sit that right in the middle of that wedge, rock solid. It cannot pull that series of knots through that grommet. So it's solid, but all I got to do is pull, and it's off. That easy. Now this is going to be measured out to about 10 feet, tied off on one end. On the other end, you're going to have this loop. Wrap her around. Take that, wrap her around. And there is my 10-foot guy line to go. Now I'll make up 4 of these. So, I hope that wasn't too long and boring for you. This is the end result. This is like an 8x8 U.S. military tent surplus. I picked it up for $15, $20, something like that. And I've got like 6 or 7 of these that I picked up over the time. Some of them were ground cloths when I got them, and I knew that. I could hold them up and see the holes. But ground cloths are very useful, and having a designated ground cloth is great when I need to throw something down on the ground. I'm going to be doing a project on the ground. I'm going to be doing a craft on the ground of some kind. Having one designated makes a difference. Now, this is rolled up and it's in my storage over here. What is it? We see that funky cord? That's a shelter system. That tells me, because of the way this is coiled up, that this is a complete shelter system. The stakes are in it, the guy lines are in it. So this cord that you're seeing is hooked to the end. That's my quick deploy. I unravel it, and the first thing that unrolls out of the top is my stakes. So with that and these stakes, I can in 2-3 minutes have a shelter up now. Okay? I have a set of 4 guy lines, like I showed you, which can be locked in or out as they're needed. I have a ridge line, which can be deployed if I need it. If I want to fly it as a tarp, or if I want to put it down as a pup tent or something. My ridge line is ready to go, plus it's already got the quick connectors on it. So I simply hook to my tarp and pull it tight. I'm done. It makes my life so much easier. And being able to look at it and tell what it is. That's not that big in size and bulk, and it probably, with all that gear in it, weighs 2 pounds, something like that. Holding it in your hand, it feels like a liter Gatorade. You know, not the big Gatorade, but the regular drinking Gatorade. That's about what it feels like in your hand. And so this would be something that I could easily pull out of a rucksack and set up in a hurry to have a quick shelter. And that's what this is meant to be, the quick shelter set. So, I hope this gives you some ideas, guys. Please leave any questions or comments below. And as always, thank you very much for supporting my channel. There will be more projects coming in this 12-week series. This was just the first. And I hope to have, I'm modifying a couple of knives, I'm doing some other stuff. I hope it'll be something you enjoy. Till next time, I'm Blackie, wishing you safe journeys. Have a great day, guys.